All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Marketing 25 Adapt and Emerge webinar. Today, we're going to be talking through a COVID-19 consumer insights study that our company commissioned, as well as an adaptive planning model that Mike Anderson will be going through for your business. So as the attendees continue to come in, I'll give you a quick housekeeping overview. So to give you a little overview of the functionality of the webinar itself, on the bottom of your screen, you're going to see chat. That's going to open up just a chat window. You can chat directly to other individuals or to the group as a whole. You can ask questions there. We have enough time for a solid Q&A session following the two presentations. So that'll give us time there. And I also have some questions that have been asked ahead of time. So we're about 27 attendees right now, which is great, and they keep coming in. So also just to let you know, there's also a Q&A functionality too. So if you click on Q&A, there you can ask questions as well too. Either one of them will be monitoring, and if you'd like to, during the Q&A session, if you'd like me to enable your audio and ask you your question via that, that would be great as well. So thanks everyone for attending. Getting a little over 30 right now, which is great. And I'm going to be tossing to our Director of Sales, Robert Burns, also known as Bubba, who will be taking us away with what we can expect today. Bubba?
Thank you, Luke. Welcome everybody to Marketing 25 Adapt and Emerge webinar series. First, I just want to make sure, safety first. I hope everyone's family is safe and healthy during this obviously difficult time, but I have the privilege to introduce some of our presenters and panelists for today's webinar. First, we have Kelsey McKee, our research analyst at Boston 25. Kristen Bright, Insights Manager at CMG Research down in Atlanta. Mike Anderson, Sales Enablement Director for Cox Media Group. And Rick Parker, the President of the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce. And what we're going to cover today is a funded CMG research study, COVID-19 Consumer Insight Study for the Boston market. And that's what Kelsey and Kristen are going to kind of highlight, some of the things that are impacting all of us. Michael is then going to take us through an adaptive planning workshop and what we need to do now to, again, plan for the future. And then we'll have a Q&A panel discussion with all of our presenters, Luke, myself, and Rick, kind of COVID's impact on local consumer behavior in our local business community. So I'm going to pass it over to Kelsey and to take it away.
Thanks, Bubba. Yeah, so like Bubba said, thank you all for joining so much. I'm Kelsey McKee, the Sales Research Analyst with Boston 25, so our local research representative. I have with me today co-presenting Kristen, and she's from our corporate research team. And just as Bubba was saying, this study came from our corporate team in Atlanta. Wait, one second, let me make sure I can, oh, there we go. Sorry, guys. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off with methodology, not always the fun part, but definitely always the necessary part, just to go over the scope of the study, give you guys an idea of what it was all about. So this study was fielded, again, by our corporate team in Atlanta. It was an internet fielded study, so people took the study online. There were 775 completes, as in respondents of the survey. The data was collected between May 7th and May 18th of this year. And as you can see on the right with our sample definitions, we had that overall bucket, so that 775 bucket respondents. We broke it out by male and female. So as you can see, there's a slight female skew, and we'll go into that a little bit more once we look at our respondent snapshot at the end of the survey. Then we had our generation bucket. So we had our millennials, there were 187 of those respondents. Our Gen X, there were 312 of those respondents. Baby boomer, 256. We then broke it out by accepting personality and nervous personality. So the accepting personality being respondents that describe the personal outlook as believing in fate, whatever will be, will be. So those are the ones that are accepting of whatever is happening, just to let it happen. Nervous personality would be those that describe their personal outlook as of COVID-19 as believing the world is forever altered and feeling uneasy. So that would be the respondents that feel uneasy about everything going on. Going into our goals and objectives. So again, we wanted to learn about consumer habits. We wanted to find out what impact this is really having on the economy, specifically the Boston economy. So we did these studies, and Kristen can go into this in more detail. We did these studies all over the country, and this is the Boston specific study. So, and as researchers, and speaking as a researcher myself also, we are very excited to be one of the first out there to really be collecting data. I was very excited myself to see what are people thinking, what are people feeling. So that's something really exciting, and kind of figuring out what's going on and what this means for the clients we work with. So it not only helps us, but it helps the people we work with.
To give you an idea, I just wanted to piggyback on what Kelsey was saying. She mentioned that we did this across all our markets. I don't know if you all are familiar, but it's over 15 markets across the country, all the way from Seattle to Boston to Pittsburgh, San Antonio, Houston, Miami, several different markets in Florida. So this is quite a comprehensive study, and I think you all will be very interested to see how similar some places are, but also how different they are. So that's actually, it's going to be pretty fascinating.
Yes. All right. So we'll go ahead and go to the impact of COVID-19 on work, nation, and feelings about the government response. All right. So to start it off, we asked respondents, how has your job been impacted by the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak? So overall, 59% of respondents said, yes, my job has been impacted. 18% didn't feel that impact, so no. And that was in the dark gray. So you can see by life stage, millennials were more dramatically impacted by this. So it's interesting to see just the fluctuation by generation. And then women were also slightly more likely to be affected.
Just to give you some comparison, this was actually something pretty common that we saw throughout all our different markets, that definitely women were a little bit more impacted than females, and definitely the younger you are, the more impacted you were as well. As far as your overall number of job impact, that 59%, that was kind of, it was like slightly high, but not really that high. Just to give you some perspective, Long Island was actually at 71%, so much higher. You guys actually aligned a lot with Atlanta here at 58%. Seattle, which we call ground zero, was 54%. And Miami actually was the highest at 78%. So again, just to give you some perspective of what other areas of the country were feeling.
Yes, perfect. We asked, how have your work hours been impacted? So this was asked of those respondents in the previous slide that have their job has been impacted by COVID-19. So 69% of those impacted have either lost their job, been laid off, or had their hours reduced. 27% have said they were laid off or lost their job. 22% noticed a reduction in hours. 20% furloughed, and then 12% noticed an extended number of hours.
Again, just to give you some comparison, as far as negative impact, you guys were kind of like similar to both Seattle and Atlanta at 68%. One of the largest impacts, negative impact, was actually like the Miami and Orlando's, those that are much more service areas. As you know, being with shutdowns, those are the most impacted. And Miami actually will top the list at like 88%. Orlando was about 78%, which you can imagine with the Disney and all those types of workers. Again, as I said before, definitely leaned female and millennials. The only exception that we had that it hit males more was Tulsa. So again, something just interesting to note.
Yeah. This slide is a nice segue into the next slide. So basically what's in the slide is in the next slide. We'll go in deeper, but just an overall snapshot. Half of the respondents say they've been working remotely from home more often. And that was asked of those that had experienced the reduction in hours, extended hours. And then 34% say their compensation has been reduced. And as you'll see in this next slide, that's basically broken out. So you have your left-hand side, that work environment. So that half of respondents saying they work remotely from home more often. And the 4% working remotely from home less often. So compensation changed. So half of respondents say their compensation has not been impacted, but 34% said their compensation has been reduced. Then you have the 7% that said their compensation increased. So
yeah. Oh yeah, just looking at this comparison, just so you all know where you stand. As far as work environment, 54%. That's actually one of the higher ones. Charlotte was at 56%, Long Island and Atlanta 51 and 50%. But compensation, actually, this is actually really good. So you see that 34% compensation has been reduced. That actually, Boston ties for the second lowest. Actually, to be honest, the lowest the compensation was reduced was the Long Island area. some of these areas that you think that it'll be like the most impacted was, but actually for compensation reduction, it was actually one of the lowest. A lot of the markets where the compensation reduction was much more higher in the 40%. Again, Atlanta was 41%. So that's actually a fantastic point for you all. That again, although that you've been impacted and a lot of things have changed, compensation has not lowered. So that's a great point that you should know.
Going into how long, I guess the question we all are kind of wondering, when will this be over, right? That's kind of the big question of the day. So basically the answer is when the consumers say it's over. So 49% think that we'll be significantly impacted for the next year or two. That's half of respondents that think that this is going to go on for a longer period of time. 38% believe that they'll be significantly impacted for the rest of 2020. So thinking about more of this in the long term now, I guess, is what we're having to do. How are businesses adapting more now? How are they, what's their long-term plan? Because people feel like this is going to be going on for a while. And as you'll see, even the respondents themselves don't think that life's going to be coming back to normal right away. So, and we'll go into that in just a little bit.
Yeah, just again, as far as the significant extended impact, again, comparing you all to Seattle, Seattle was much more the sky is falling, the Chicken Littles, they were at 57%. But just to give you some perspective, Atlanta was about 42% and definitely down into the Florida areas, Jacksonville and Orlando, 35%. But one thing to keep in mind is that this study was conducted in basically, in earlier May. So we are going to do this study again. It's just going to be fascinating how those are those states that reopen. They're seeing a little bit more, oh my gosh, coronavirus picking up. So again, we're doing this, we're going to do this a second wave, and it's going to be very fascinating to see how people's viewpoints change.
Yeah, I'm actually curious. Great point, Kristen. I'm curious to see how all this changes in the next study for sure, or if it changes. All right. We asked, what best describes the personal outlook you will most align with after COVID-19 passes? 41% believe in fate. Whatever is meant to be will be. So more of that positive, again, outlook. 37% say the world is forever altered and they feel uneasy. So this goes back to those two buckets that we had about people being more either easygoing and just letting, fate take its course, or those who feel very uneasy.
Again, looking at this, that 37%, you have to keep in mind that's 1 in 3 people in the Boston area think basically doomsday mentality. My world is forever altered. You actually, that was the highest area that we got is Boston, thinking of this more doomsday mentality, really close with Seattle at 36%. Atlanta was much more at 26% and whatnot. So again, with your consumers, it's basically on what they feel. So again, they don't think this is going to be over. This is going to have an extended impact. So we're not going to have it like an end, oh, everything goes back to normal, of which we'll see data on that later. But again, there's not going to be any post-COVID. It's going to be a new normalcy. What are people doing? And then learning as a business how to adapt to that.
Yep, exactly. All right. We asked what attitude will most align with after COVID-19 passes. So this goes back to that slide that I was talking about previously about people feeling like this is going to go on for a long time. 81% say they will be more cautious in what they do and how they do it. So that's a large chunk of respondents that are basically saying, like, even when things do go back to normal, I'm going to be more cautious. 14% say they'll go right back to living the way they did before the pandemic. So really, it's all about that cautiousness. They're going to be dipping their toes back in the water when they get back out and doing their normal lifestyle. So this is definitely a longer term. At least that's what we're seeing in the Boston market. And then Kristen.
In the other markets, actually, this was pretty similar across the board. I mean, there were some a little bit higher. I think Miami was the highest at 87%. But like one of the lower ones, Atlanta, was like at 78%. But what actually was really interesting in both this slide and the previous slide is we usually have really stark differences between males and females. Males tend to be far more optimistic. Females tend to be much more pessimistic. But actually what was very unique about Boston, it was similar in Long Island as well, is there wasn't as much difference between the genders. So again, that was also very fascinating because, again, mostly it's usually females, but here males seem to be as freaked out or that, the very similar viewpoints.
All right. jumping right into, 1 second, guys. I was just playing around with it. Okay. We asked, what is the biggest threat you are facing as a result of the pandemic? The biggest threat right now, quality of their child's education. So in that dark gray, what they listed as the major threat to their lifestyle. That lighter gray is more of a minor threat, the red being not a threat. 56% say quality of their child's education, like I was just saying. 42% say their day-to-day lifestyle. And then 41, their personal health. Now it drops off, so once things like, for instance, their marriage, personal relationship, alcoholism, substance abuse, they're not as worried about those things.
Just looking at this, again, as far as in comparison, personal health. So if you look at that 82%, so that's meaning it's a threat. It's either a minor or major threat. You guys, that was the top across all markets. So personal health is definitely something to look at. Looking at this, you know, you kind of look for things for opportunities and whatnot. And personal health, you know, maybe if you look across, you see millennials at 78%. That's actually pretty high. So thinking different of opportunities, is there a way maybe if you sell like immune boosting things or, you know, or whatnot, some of those things that, you know, millennials are definitely taking notice of their health. As far as quality of education, what was interesting in this was high across the board for everyone. But you all look at the millennials, 93%. That was the highest across all 15 markets. So typically millennials are aged 25 to 39. So more likely they're going to have kids in that primary education arena. So again, if you have, you know, you're a Sylvan or whatnot, these sorts of like educational opportunities, I mean, definitely millennials are hit and are very concerned about their quality of their child's education. And if we look down there at marriage, personal relationship, again, it's obviously lower than the other ones, but still that's one in three people saying that this is going to take a hit to their marriage or personal relationship. That's actually pretty high. And look at that, as far as millennials, it's 42%. So just looking at that, 1 in 4 people, alcoholism, abuse, if that's something, an arena or an industry you're in, definitely some opportunity there.
Okay. How confident are you with the government's response to the pandemic? So here we go through the color coordination. So the dark red being very confident, the black being somewhat confident, dark gray, not too confident, blue, not at all confident, and then light gray would be don't know. So we can see from here that people are most confident in their state government's response, not so much federal government. So federal government ranked last, and then local government is in between. So that's.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was
going to say, looking across this on the markets, actually your state government, 84% was actually the highest of anyone's state government, and going across this is typically corresponded with red and blue states or whatnot. If it was actually interesting, there were some states, I mean, 84%, even the 75% is a bit high. Usually most of the numbers are in the 50s and 60s. And then there was Miami, who all the numbers were in the 40s. They just didn't trust anyone. And that actually sets up great for this next slide.
Yep. Okay. Teeing it up to how will you know when it's okay to resume some of the things you stopped during the pandemic? So the top, clear indication, and these are all pretty evenly ranked, so there wasn't a lot of fluctuation in this, but clear indication that the number of cases has gone down. So that is the top reason for people. An effective treatment vaccine. So people want to see the vaccine. People want to see the vaccine, and they want to see that cases have gone down before they resume some of their normal activities.
Yeah, looking from this past slide, if you look at this again, you kind of have, where's the trust in government? It kind of varies. Looking at this, if you notice, the top 3 responses are basically objective responses, meaning I want to see evidence. And as you go below that, it's more subjective. What's interesting about Boston area in particular, again, the differences were very small between the males and females. This actually, it was much bigger fluctuations in almost every other market. But again, just going back, it's going to take multiple things. Not just one thing is going to have people, okay, it's good to resume. We have some questions here, and then look at that. The things that'll get them back, the top one, which was similar across to the other markets, were those objective things. Okay, where's the evidence? So again, just something to know.
All right, and being cognizant of time. Luke, how are we doing on time? Pretty good?
We're doing great on time. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, just want to make sure I'm keeping up. All right. We asked respondents, which activities have you done more of since the start of the pandemic? 56% said they spent more time organizing their home. 50% said they spent more time cooking or baking, and you can see all of this broken down on the left-hand side. 40% more time outdoors. 34% said they spent more time exercising, eating more healthy. So these are all things. Now, most at the top, though, organizing their home has been the top activity.
And just looking at this from a business perspective, just take a moment to think. So these are activities that people are doing more at home, and these are a bit more personal-based activities. So being a business owner, basically, how does what you sell play a new role in this everyday environment? And how are you facilitating this new environment as regards to social distancing or contactless delivery? So there's lots of different opportunities. If you look at here, they've spent more time organizing their home. Maybe you're a closet person, or you can help them with that. There's opportunity everywhere across this page. Another thing that you can look at is, people are spending more time online. So maybe you offer higher education classes. Is that some sort of thing that you can differentiate yourself in that arena? So again, looking at these personal everyday routines, and we just saw that a lot of people think this is going to be extended impact. I mean, will people eventually go back to work? Yes, but you have to keep in mind that doesn't necessarily mean that these behavior patterns are going to change. And there's been a lot who speculated that people are starting to like a little bit more of this homework-life balance. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And not only does that affect your consumers, but it also affects your employees. How are you going to attract and keep your skilled workers? Without a doubt, we know that this virus has affected how you sell your products, but don't forget that it also affects your labor force.
Which functional activities have you done more of since the start of the pandemic? So this teases off that last side, and basically what Kristen was talking about also. 61% bought more items online. So online shopping is the #1 activity that people have been doing. I have to say, speaking for sample size of 1, I've done a little bit too much of that myself. So I can understand why that's at the top. 58% use more restaurant or delivery takeout services. 48% use more cashless payment options. So that's your Venmo. There's a number of them. The Venmo is the #1 that's coming to mind. 34% ordered more groceries for curbside pickup. So these are all like contactless. People are doing a lot of these more online friendly options, as we'll see later too.
Something that happened in your market, and it was actually pretty similar across all markets, is if you start really looking at the gender breakdown in these, look at, purchasing items online, higher amongst females, using restaurant delivery takeout service, highest among females, stocking up on perishables. Whereas if you look at the going to a grocery store in person, a little bit higher with the males. So definitely we see evidence of like technology pattern base. If there's, a technology available, that women tend to use it a little bit more than men. And we definitely see that, which is pretty expected amongst the millennials. Millennials, if there's a technology-based thing that they can use, they're definitely starting to use that more.
Which activities have you done less of since the start of the pandemic? 73% have traveled less. So traveling is the #1 right now. Doctor visits in person, so they're avoiding any type of something that requires contact, anything that requires having to be in a public place. Shopping at local businesses in person, they're doing less of. Purchasing items at a physical store in person. Driving in general. So they're just avoiding overall just being out in the public, which is not a surprise. So.
Yeah, again, just looking at, there's actually some stark differences between males and females. Again, females are doing just more evidence that females are doing things less in person as opposed to whether it was technology based. So basically, as as a business owner, you need to look at this and see, like, is what you have to alter, or can you alter maybe what you have to alter in order to try to get some of this business back sooner? Because definitely people, are doing a lot less of activities.
And then playing off again, which activities have you delayed since the start of the pandemic? At the top, so kind of similar to what we were seeing before, visiting a doctor, dentist, traveling, vacation plans. So those two, again, at the top are things that people are delaying.
Yeah, looking at this from the opportunity aspect, again, of, visiting a doctor, travel plans, I don't think that comes as a huge surprise to anyone, but you need to sort of think about it this way. People keep talking about pent-up demand, but if I'm like delaying a routine doctor's visit or getting my hair cut or whatever, when I am allowed to go back or I do feel like going back, I'm not going to go to the doctor twice. So that demand is actually lost. So if you're in those sorts of businesses, you need to ask yourself, what are you doing in order to make your consumers feel comfortable in order to come back sooner? As we look on down this list, these numbers seem low, but there's lots of opportunity here. Purchasing new furniture is at 20%. Maybe you're a furniture store. Is what you have to sell. Can people go online and see everything you have there? Because now you're going to be competing with other online furniture stores. Maybe purchasing a vehicle, 17%. Maybe you can offer test drives or something like that from a person's home. One of the other things that was really big on this is going back to school at 12%. If you go across and look at that millennial, that 23%, mind you, millennials are aged 25 to 39. Huge opportunity there, because usually in a down economy, people do go back to school because they want to get these skills that, their skill set up. Again, huge opportunity there. And then when that 25 to 39, we're not talking about your average age, your 20-year-old going to college or whatever. So again, if you look at this page, I challenge you to look at all the different opportunities here that present themselves. Even the home improvements, 13%. Again, people they're not traveling those plans. So they have some pent up money. Maybe if they're sitting in their home, maybe I don't want to go out and I don't want to go on these vacations because my world is forever altered. I'm going to do some home improvements. I'm going to put my own home theater in. I'm going to put a pool in my backyard, those sorts of things. So look at this really from the opportunity aspect.
Yes, how do you think this pandemic will change your behavior in the future? This slide I actually found very, very interesting, and I'll say that why in a second. People at the top, 81% will continue to wash their hands more often. 55% will continue to avoid large concerts, pay attention to global news and events. From more of a local news standpoint, we found this slide very informative because you kind of have to start thinking about what people are doing instead. So when you say you're going to avoid a large concert, what are you doing with your time instead? We've noticed even from a local news perspective that we've had such high viewing, especially as we get, which is why we added it at 10 a.m. news, later in the morning, later in the day. When it comes to things like sports and entertainment, people want to be entertained. So we've noticed such an increase in audience there. And of course, for the fall, we're predicting so much of a higher audience for football. And so that's just something interesting just to kind of look at, because you see all these things that people are avoiding. They're avoiding mass transit. They're going to be likely buying more cars. So there's just different things that you kind of have to think of with this slide on the flip side.
Yeah, one of those things that is on the flip side, look at the very bottom, my behavior will not change at all. You flip that, that's 91% of people are basically saying their behavior is going to change in basically because of pandemic. So again, this just gives the business owners further evidence that you're going to have to adapt and be agile and evolve as a business, because more than likely the status quo is just not going to be viable. Just to give you some comparison, all those 50%, actually, these are much higher than Long Island, something I also like to compare you all to, because I think the markets are very similar. With the exception of I take my health more seriously, that was very similar. I'll avoid mass transit. In Long Island, it was 43%. I will continue to avoid large sporting events. In Long Island, that was 33%. So again, it's just so fascinating how great this information is, because it's at the market level. This isn't about the nation. If we were presenting this across all CMG markets, there's so many interesting differences between the markets. That's what makes this so valuable.
Luke, I think we have about 4 more slides. Do we have time?
We do, absolutely. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Just want to make sure. Okay. We asked, what are you looking forward to when the outbreak ends? So at the top, going to restaurants, getting out of the house, going to the salon, barbershop, shopping. All these things aren't surprising, but definitely everyone's ready to get out whenever this is over. So.
Yeah, again, what this makes it's that the people do want to get out. It's not hopeless. But again, this just shows how critical it is to evolve as a business. I know one aspect when you're looking at this, people want to get out. Again, everywhere, how you're doing this is different across, like I said, different industries. But a good tagline here is, you know, and they do come back, you know, we've missed you too, especially when you're going to a restaurant. So people do want to get back out.
Okay. We asked, how comfortable are you with the following activities? The corporate team separated this into 2 tiers. So we have our top tier, which are the things that they feel most comfortable with. Second tier, second most. Going to a bank drive-through. You'll see all these are more online driven, taking higher education classes online, using telemedicine services. In that tier 2, allowing a home service technician to service outside their house. So thinking again, it's kind of similar to what Kristen was saying earlier, that outside people are going to want to be getting more stuff done outside. Speaking to a lawyer using Zoom, Skype, signing up for online banking account services. So that huge push again for online content.
Looking at this, which was really interesting, is that in general, males are more comfortable with doing all of these aspects than females. Slight exception is speaking to a lawyer via Zoom. But definitely when you get to that tertiary tier, that it actually increases. Males are much more comfortable. What was absolutely fascinating and what made Boston is unique is look at some of these in-person activities. So allowing a home service technician to service the outside your home. The older people are, the more likely or the more comfortable they are with that. So definitely something that's counterintuitive. Looking at down the line, going to an automotive dealership for a repair center, going to an office to sign legal documentation, going to a doctor's office, all these things, again, counterintuitive. Definitely your baby boomers are highly resilient. They are more comfortable doing all this. And it's actually millennials that are a little more skittish. So again, you would think the higher people who are vulnerable in that bracket would be less comfortable. Oh, wait, I want to avoid that. It's actually your millennials. So again, something that's just very fascinating and good to know.
This slide is definitely for our home service folks out there. We asked, what would increase your comfort level with having a service tech in your home? So this data is super valuable for all y'all who are like getting your business running with everything going on. What are people wanting when it comes to people servicing their homes? At the top, wearing a mask at all times, 71%. So although all these are high, that wearing the mask has been what people say they're most comfortable with. Sanitizing the work area, wearing protective clothing, limiting the area they are in to only a small section of the house. All of these, they feel like would make them more comfortable also.
Yeah, I would just add on to this. This is actually great copy because this addressing these areas before is what's going to remove those obstacles that's standing between you and your client's home. And you can actually do this across a lot of various different industries. So this is also telling us that people want you to be conspicuous. They're nervous. They want to see you clean off your saw before you use it again. They want to see that hand sanitizer dangling from your work belt. These are the sorts of things. Again, it's not important about what the home service technician thinks. It's more important about what the consumers think. So again, there might be some, well, I'm outside. Do I have to wear this mask? This is telling us people want to see that on, especially in home services.
Okay, we're starting to wrap up our study now. This slide asks, how important do you think it is for companies to address our current health crisis? Not surprisingly, 77% said that this was very important to them in that light gray. There isn't much fluctuation with this either when it comes to generation or gender. So this is definitely something that people need to be addressing if they aren't already, which I'm guessing most are. So.
Yeah, this is pretty similar across all the markets. You're pretty much average on this. There was very little fluctuation from highest to lowest. Everyone was over 8.2, ranged from 8.2 to 9.1. So.
All right. Now that as we wrap up, I'm just ending with our respondent snapshot, something I said we would be going into at the beginning of the study. This just kind of gives what were the people who were taking the study, what are the demographics. Again, like I was saying earlier, we had that 60% female, so a skew with female. We had that generation bucket. So the 24% millennial, 40% Gen X, 33% baby boomer, 84% of the respondents were white, 5% black, 7% Hispanic, 4% Asian. 80% had 1 to 2 children in the household. Employment, 48% at the time that the survey was taken were employed. And then social and fiscal economic viewpoints. This actually myself found quite surprising that half of respondents were middle of the road. So half of respondents didn't leave necessarily conservative or liberal. So definitely during a political year, this is very interesting to see, especially with everything going on. 23% said very somewhat conservative on social, 28% on fiscal, economic, 15% were very to somewhat liberal on social, and then 9% on fiscal. Also, half of respondents were married. 53% have been in their home more than 15 years. This isn't a surprise. I've seen this with most of our studies that people have been here in Boston for a number of years. And then half of respondents own their home while 38% rent lease. So that is our respondent snapshot. And that is how we end our study. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to us present today.
Thank you very much, Kelsey. If you don't mind just disabling your screen share there, I'm going to introduce Mike Anderson, who'll be going into the adaptive planning slides that he's put together and the overall mindset of what adaptive planning is. So Mike Anderson is, as Bubba mentioned, our Sales Enablement Director. So thank you very much to Kelsey and Kristen. I thought that was a fantastic walkthrough of our study. I'll go into it in our Q&A session a little bit more about how we can access that information from us as well, too. So next up is Mike Anderson. Mike, if you don't mind enabling your screen share there.
Sure. Great. And confirm for me that you can see it.
We can. You just have to click on presenting, and there you're good to go. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good. So just a little bit of homework from this morning. 16 states, as of this morning, have either paused or reversed the speed at which they are opening. So that's something that we kind of saw coming way ahead of time. So I think it's about a month and a half ago. We got together as a team and started thinking, okay, look, we can't just focus on what's going on right now, because things are subject to change very, very quickly. I think it was Wayne Gretzky that said, you don't skate to where the puck is, you skate to where the puck is going to go. And that's a little bit more difficult right now because we're not always sure where things are going to go. And that's the idea behind adaptive planning. If you take what Kristen and Kelsey just shared, this is a way of taking that information and making it useful and actionable. Because right now, you don't just need an ad campaign. That would be just crazy. You really need a communication strategy, something that can evolve with the changing conditions that are just overnight. We're seeing something different than we did the day before. A plan that explains how and when your company's products and services are available and safely accessible. And also the ability to educate your customers about the steps you're taking to keep them safe. It's not just what Governor Baker says about how you go back to business. The consumer gets a vote, and they want to know how we're going to do this in a way that they can have some peace of mind as they come back to your business. So here's the idea behind adaptive planning. When we first built it, we basically looked at this the same way we did terrorism threats after 9/11. There's different levels of threat, and we built kind of an argument for each of the stages we might be at. For the sake of the Boston region, the New England area, what we did recently was just take this and match it up with what the government of Massachusetts laid out and the phases of reopening, the phases of threat levels that they have interpreted. So we basically just modified this so it's compatible with things you already have heard as a resident of New England. So the idea here is that, look, we know things can change. We know we could speed up and things get better faster than we think. So we should be ready for that. You shouldn't, if we're in phase 2 today, which we are, at least we're several steps into phase 2, and things go really, really well, we could be in phase 3 before you know it. Or if there's a resurgence like we're seeing across somewhere in the order of 33 states now as of this morning, we could take a step backwards. We should have a plan for that too. Just because we're in phase 2 doesn't mean that's the only plan you need to have ready. So let's just walk through this and take a look. Let's start with worst case scenario, where we were not that long ago, where things are pretty well locked down. Only essential businesses were open. During that situation, as a company in your messaging plan, you want to just basically focus on being empathetic, making clear your commitment to community, the whole we're in this together kind of mindset, and make sure that you're recognizing the nature of essential workers. Think of this. We have completely redefined what we think of when we think of essential employees. Yes, it's first responders, doctors, nurses. It's also grocery store cashiers, delivery people. These are the folks that we think of as essential. And we want to make sure that we have some special offers in place for folks like that are keeping the train from leaving the tracks. Also make sure you're focused on your online or delivery options if they're available, and talk about how you stand ready to support the community as the recovery begins. You know, granted, when we're in this lockdown mode, the worst case scenario, the spending probably should be pretty modest. But you want to maintain a relationship with the community, the consumers you serve, because you've invested a lot in your brand equity and you don't want people to forget about you. Think about it, it's been about 15 weeks since this mess started to happen. That's a long time. And if you don't at least have a little bit of a presence, people have a chance to forget you were there. When we upgrade to safer at home, which we're past this point now in Boston, but as we're the greater Boston area, this was safer at home. You all remember this, it's fresh in your mind. Limited industries resume operations with restrictions. You know, this is a time for you to continue to communicate those online options or delivery or curbside pickup options. Manage expectations here with regard to product availability. We saw shortages during this period of time, and consumers are not just going to assume that what they want from you will be in stock. So if you're facing challenges in that regard, you want to communicate with people so they know what they can or cannot expect from you to avoid making a trip or trying to place an order that's not going to happen. Here, the spend level, if you're an essential business, it's time to kind of pick up the pace because you're getting a little bit more active. If you're a non-essential business, probably still going to stick with modest marketing investments, but a little bit of an uptick because you want to start building some anticipation now as we make forward progress. Next phase, phase two, where we are in arguably for a lot of businesses right now. Additional industries resume operations. You know, as you know, full well there. This is happening in steps. It's not all at once. But anyway, more companies are resuming operations. There are some restrictions, some capacity limitations. Here's where you want to start to embrace the consumers that are ready to get back out there and explain how they can do that safely, and also communicate the safety measures that you're taking. You know, I think from the data, 81%, we heard just a few minutes ago from Kelsey and Kristen, 81% of people are going to be more cautious when this is over. So it's not just enough to say, hey, we're open, we're going to have a tent sale, there's a big show out in the parking lot with balloons and clowns and everything. That's not going to cut it. People want to know how to embrace you logistically. How can they do this carefully? So communicate your safety measures, do a really good job of adhering to those occupancy restrictions. And also remember, there's still some folks reluctant to get out there. So keep up your conversation about online curbside pickup delivery if that's available. Your spend weight here, it's time to get a little bit more assertive. It's time to think about protecting and growing the market share that you've built over the years, and exploit the fact that, exploit share of voice is the way I have it up here. But what I mean by that is there's going to be companies that are a little bit more conservative than you. And if you have the wherewithal to get out there now, you can get pretty cost-effective share of voice for the dollar spent. So it's a good time to get optimal exposure out of your spend. You know, when we get past phase two and into phase three, you know, this is where additional industries are open, but there is still guidance. The way to explain this is to say, COVID-19, coronavirus is not over. We're not going to go back to normal for a long time, even after a vaccine is introduced. But this is a point at which we could say the crisis has passed. The shock value is over. The feeling of trauma that we went through is not there anymore. Now it's just like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna order something and have it delivered, or we're gonna sneak out, pick it up through a drive-through. The situation will feel as if it has normalized. So consumers eager to get back to things are gonna get back into new routines. They're gonna back into old routines and establish some new routines based on the conditions we face now. So I think this is a time to embrace that, but also still be respectful that there's a few cautious, vulnerable adults out there might not be eager to get out there just yet. So you have to focus on the folks that are ready to get out there. And then how are you going to take care of the folks that are a little bit more reluctant and make it easy for them as well? Here, it's time to get a little more aggressive with your spend. Heavy comes to mind. After all, you're going to have a lot of revenue to make up on the back half of this year that was frustrating to come by during the first half. And then the day that we're all looking forward to, phase 4 is when we're back to that new sense of normalcy. There's probably a vaccine or therapy in hand that makes me feel like we're past this. Consider which habits people have adopted during the crisis that they're going to retain. They're going to stay in place even now that things are over. For example, home as headquarters. Home used to be where we went when we were not working. Now home is where we go to work for a lot of folks. It's where a lot of people go to school. It's become much more central to our lives than it was even before the pandemic. Here, the spend level it's time to get aggressive, but you want to inform this by really sound marketing strategy principles. It's not just the Wild West, so that's important. It's critical as we think about when do we go, what do we do next? Governor Baker gets a big vote here, but so does your company. Are you ready? Are you ready to execute in a way that is safe? And also the biggest vote of all goes to the consumer. Do they feel comfortable getting out there? So the kind of data that Kelsey and Kristen were going through a few minutes ago, absolutely critical. And just be ready for the idea that, doesn't matter where we are today. If we're in phase 2 today, that's great. If things go better than we thought, faster than we planned, you want to be ready for phase 3 at that point. If we take a slide backward, the thing is, panic is what happens in the absence of a plan. You want to make sure that you have a plan for any of these various scenarios so that you're ready to go there and you're not caught off guard. Coronavirus caught a lot of people off guard the first time. Shame on it. If it catches us off guard again, shame on us. Don't be that person. So you need to really be ready for almost anything. And at CMG, we feel like we're equipped to help you plan for that. There is a document that you can just reach out to Luke or the team at CMG for, and it's basically just a worksheet that helps you stop and think about where are we, where might we go next, what are the things I should just anticipate or be ready for under a wide variety of circumstances. And Luke, you'll tell people how to get their hands on that, right? And I think I can stop my screen share and toss it back to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Mike. And I absolutely will tell them about that, because I actually have taken that a step further from just asking us to, or reaching out to us to get that sheet. I actually had a friend who was able to put this into an interactive QR code. So this is kind of a neat technology here. So if you take your cell phone out, your smartphone, this is for panelists, attendees, and basically you point your camera right at that QR code, that's going to allow you to download the document Mike mentioned right now. So that's just a neat
nice
little technology put into there too. And also a way for us to keep in touch with you as well too. So there's always that part too. But if everyone was comfortable with that, feel free to just do that with your phone now. I will stop the screen share now, and we'll go back to our panel discussion here. Gallery view, perfect. And I will be our moderator for the panel discussion. I'll start off with, also, actually, you know what? I will start off with one thing, which is please, attendees, feel free to add into the chat your questions, as well as you have the functionality of raising your hand. So I'll see that if you want to raise your hand, and that way you can ask your question via audio too. So just another cool little integration with technology here. So first question I will give to Kelsey. Thanks very much for presenting today. This is a abridged version of our study. So how can attendees see the whole study? Is there a path for that?
Yes, no, absolutely. So of course, if anyone else wants to see the whole completed study, if they want to be able to share it back with their folks where they came from, then absolutely I would love to present that study to you. So if any of you guys want to see it again, just let one of our representatives know who you're in contact with, and they'll get in touch with me, and then we will all have another Zoom meet together, and then you guys can see the data again and make it more of a personal conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelsey. And also the beauty of that, as Kelsey mentioned, is you can bring multiple team members into that meeting with the virtual technology as we're all using right now. It's very easy for a number of us to get on that meeting as well as a number of team members on your end too. Rick Parker, President of the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce, our partner in this event, and also we're members of the Chamber as well. What questions have you received most often from local businesses related to COVID?
Well, Luke, I'd say when it first came out, most of it was inward faced. You know, companies were looking at how they're going to be able to survive. How are they going to get financing, unemployment assistance, help with the PPP. What we're seeing now is the initial panic is over for most of these businesses, and they're looking at how they get to those next steps. So how do they understand the reopening plan, procure PPE, and really start looking at how to engage their customers. Where is the customer? Where have they gone? And what's the best ways to be able to contact them? So for those that haven't been on many of these Adapt and Emerge series, Marketing 25 has done a good job of letting you know where the customer is, where they've been, what they're thinking, and it's changing day to day. So we hope to bring more people to these webinars in order to get them thinking outside the box, because the time for that panic is over, and time looking forward to the new normal, to get back out there and engage the customers.
Thank you very much, Rick. And this question for Mike, what are the primary steps in developing an adaptive marketing plan?
Well, the steps are laid out in the worksheet, so that'll be just a quick review of what we've covered today. But I would submit that the first step to anything when you're building a plan is to assess before you do anything else. You've all heard the metaphor: seek first to understand, then to be understood. Before you open your mouth, I think you want to listen very carefully, assess what's going on with the consumers you aspire to serve. How do they feel? If you're not in touch with that, your message could fall on deaf ears, or you could hear the term tone deaf if you're not paying attention to that. So number one, assess, and then adapt your business to the new circumstances that you find yourself in. You have operating limitations that you've had that you have not had in the past. You have consumer expectations that you have not had in the past that are new now. So pay attention to those things, and then adapt and emerge, but then repeat. This is not a one and done deal where, oh, okay, I listened to a thing, I went to a webinar, there's a research thing, it's great, now I put together a plan, now I'm going to lock and load and move forward. That'd be a fool's game. This is going to change. Kristen mentioned briefly, as well as Kelsey, that the study that we did here was the first in a series. We're going to keep our fingers on the pulse of New England consumers and watch how consumer sentiment evolves over time. That 81% of folks who've said, this is a longer term issue. I'm going to be more cautious about the way I move forward. That could change by mid-July. People might say, yeah, old news. I'm not going to worry about wearing a mask now. We don't know, but we're going to ask them. So this should not be an incident. This webinar should not be an event. It should be the beginning of a process. And by the way, Kelsey up there could be one of your best friends in business, because she's going to be the person you reach out to and through whom that intelligence is gained, along with the marketing staff at Boston 25.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. And that was a surprise guest speaker of my daughter, Olivia, age 3, who wanted to say hi to everybody there.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
That's just the modern work world we all live in. Let's toss to Kristen here. Kristen, so after seeing the study results across the country and the various CMG markets, what questions do you wish you would have included on top of what we had already seen through the study?
It's actually pretty interesting because as Mike, we actually are in collaboration with Mike on this questionnaire. And there were a lot of things that we were surprised about that were different across our markets. We wanted to get a little bit more on especially going back to work, because mind you, we did this in May. Everybody was pretty much locked down. So definitely we're going to address some things on, you know, how comfortable it is to go back to work, these sorts of things. And, you know, especially in your area, that not as many people's compensation was reduced. In fact, you know, a lot of people think that people have more savings or more income because they're not traveling and whatnot. And they, you know, they have time to or have the money to sink into their homes and whatnot. So we'll get a little bit more into that. But I think it's just going to be fascinating because, again, we're trying to do this in late July, and a lot of stuff, I mean, stuff changes weekly. I don't know where we'll be in July, but, and what people think. I mean, when we started the study, people in Florida were stopping people from New York coming down, and now it's vice versa. Now New Yorkers are like, oh no, Floridians, you stay there. So again, it'll be quite fascinating when we do this a second wave to see, you know, what the differences are.
Absolutely, and thank you, Kristen. Part of that we saw early on, and we're still seeing, is sports, the impact of sports and large gatherings. So this question is for Bubba, being that you know, Marketing 25 is our business brand, if you will, that encapsulates everything we do on the marketing side, from production, research, television, digital, anything that any clients of ours need. We basically fit in like a puzzle piece and work with you as a trusted advisor to develop that strategy for you. But related to sports, what has Fox Sports announced so far for MLB, NFL, golf, and does the network give you any heads up related to their adaptive planning roadmap? That's for Bubba.
Well, from a Fox, yeah, again, we're kind of just, we know about the NFL. They're planning to move forward. That may change. I did read something last week that state by state, they may allow spectators to a certain capacity in some states. Again, that goes back to what's that local or state government saying to the owners of the team. So my expectation is that NFL will move forward. College football was a big unknown a month ago, right? Do you allow students to come back early? Do you allow them to work out? And then what does that impact on potential students that don't participate in sports or aren't student athletes? What does that do? But they seem to be moving forward. You have some schools that are doing online. It could be an option for some students to do online, stay home, and then return in the second semester. MLB just announced, I mean, that was good news, 60 games. That'll start July 30th. It'll be a race to the finish to October, and then for playoffs and World Series in October. So that's a good sign. They were a pretty good distance away a couple of weeks ago. So I'm glad they've worked it out. So again, for Fox, they've invested in live sports because they know, like we know with live local news, that's what people want, right? We're in a position now where, again, because people are home, there's more usage with whether it be local news, live sports, because there aren't people there, or even OTT platform. A lot more people watching Netflix than ever before, Hulu. But again, they're running out of content. But I go back to what we're seeing from a local perspective. We are that trusted resource from a local news for our community, and that's what our goal is every single day, is to bring them the most updated information to keep them safe. And I look at some of that, you know, that cautious 81% of our market is just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to cool it right now. I'm not really sure. And guess where they go? They go to our local news to get that information. And again, I would give kudos to Charlie Baker, you know, as far as his communication out. He's done a really terrific job of kind of controlling expectations, what you need to do, how you need to do it to keep your family safe. And that is a huge priority for all of us in this area. So, but again, I think as things change, as Mike mentioned, 16 states have gone the other direction. What that does to live sports and local sports, again, could be, again, up in the air a month from now. So I'm looking forward to the next phase of this.
Great. Well, thank you very much. So we have time for one last question. This is a group question. What advice can you give to a business who's waiting for things to return to normal before making their plan?
Don't wait.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Don't wait. Take this information and run with it.
If you're waiting for
I would say
normal,
you-
normal has changed. It's not going back. What even old plans, even if we go back, as Mike mentioned, as far as it's post-crisis, it's not going to go back to the way things were. Similar to 9/11, New Yorkers didn't, is when that happened, they didn't go, okay, we cleaned this up and went back. It's forever altering. This is the new normal, and again, status quo is probably not going to remain viable.
And Kristen, I mean, the data speaks for itself. I mean, that's the cool thing about research, is that when you don't know the answer, you realize that research is the answer. You collect the data, you figure out what people are thinking. People are thinking this is going to be lasting a lot longer than anticipated. So the fact that that's the case, it's all about adapting now. It's not waiting. So.
And the
I'd like to
saying
just-
goes, Mike, if I could just jump in here, the saying goes that all business is local. And I think you've done a great job at analyzing what the nation is doing, what the Boston area is doing. And the greater Burlington area has its own thoughts about what's happening out here. We're heavy in the service industry, in the restaurant and hospitality industry, which have been really hard hit. The daytime population from the tech sector and some of these larger companies is down. So as businesses here used to do business from seat of their pants or the customer in front of them, they need partners that have information, partners like Marketing 25 and some of the other partners that we bring to the table to listen to what's going on outside of the normal environment.
Yeah, I would add, same with Boston 25 as a business. We don't do anything without understanding the viewer habit. What do they want? How do they want it? And we give it to them the way they want it. And that's no different for a lot of the folks on the call here, business owners. And what people feel right now, how we did business prior is not how we need to do business moving forward. If you have a really good website that works on a laptop, but it doesn't work on a mobile device, guess what? That's a problem. You gotta fix that. What's your message on your website? Does it marry your message on your display ads? Does it marry the message that you have on TV? Are you talking or communicating? Communicating is the key to people to make them feel safe, because that was the highest percentage of what people need to know to get out, right? So whether it's e-commerce or someone coming into your business, you've got to make them feel comfortable. 100%. Mike?
I would just, to repeat, we are not going back to normal. We are going forward. We're going to a new normalized set of circumstances. If you're waiting to go back to normal, the companies that are moving forward are going to be the folks that take your market share. On a positive note, I'll leave with this thought. On the slide that said, what are you looking forward to getting back to? 3% said none of the above. The consumers miss you as much as you miss them, and they can't wait to get back out there. The smart company, the really smart company right now, is thinking about, okay, how are we going to make that happen? How can we facilitate what consumers are eager to get back to? And man, if you haven't thought of it lately, what a time to reflect on how fortunate you are to have such a diversified economy in a place like Greater Boston. It's not just tourism, it's not just restaurants, it's education, healthcare, oodles of technology. You just have so much going on there. The reason your work from home numbers were so high, because you have a lot of people in finance and insurance that were in a position to make that move. So I like your chances. I like them a lot.
Great. Well, thank you all very much.
Luke.
That's okay. That's a great segue to the end here. And I just wanted to say a special thanks to Kelsey McKee, Kristen Bright for presenting our study, Mike Anderson for adaptive planning, Bubba Burns for introductions and also for the panel discussion, and of course to Rick Parker, President of the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce. We're members. Hope you will be too in the near future. And we'll see you everyone in the very near future. And please reach out so we can help you with your communication strategy. All the best. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.